Everyone, and welcome. Thank you. And welcome to 19 Washington Square North, which is the intellectual center and home of NYU Abu Dhabi here in New York. My name is Michael Pruganan. I'm a professor of biology here at NYU in New York. And I also have a laboratory at NYU Abu Dhabi, or in the NYU campus in Abu Dhabi. And I serve as the academic director of 19 Washington Square North. So over the course of the academic year, 19 Washington Square North is host to numerous public lectures, workshops, and conferences. It's a place where members of the NYU community, as well as the public, can come and learn more about different topics of concern to them around the world. It's also a place of community where members of the NYU Abu Dhabi community who are here in New York can come and gather together. Many of the events that are organized here are organized by the NYU Abu Dhabi Institute, which is led by its Director of Research and Academic Programs, Sharon Bergman. She couldn't be here, unfortunately, today, but also her staff, Ralph Raymond and Kyle Ketzer over there. So today we were host to the Interdisciplinary Symposium on Decolonial Botany. And for the public event for this symposium, we are really privileged to have two artist talks that will reflect on the intersection of botany and the arts. To introduce our two artists and moderate a conversation with them, let me introduce the convener of the symposium, Professor Katia Arfara, an assistant professor of theater and performance studies and the MFA program in art and media at NYU Abu Dhabi. Her research, curatorship, and teaching focus on migration, ecology, memory, and the politics of representation. As the theater and dance artistic director and curator of the Onassis Stegi in Athens from 2009 to 2019, she initiated and curated numerous interdisciplinary festivals at the intersection of art, technology, and civic practice, such as the Fast Forward Festival. Professor Arfara is the author of the book Théâtralité Contemporaine and the co-editor of Intermedial Performance and Politics in the Public Sphere. She's a contributor to the NYU Abu Dhabi Al Maurid Arab Center for the Study of Art and co-leads the Elements Pod in the Anthropocene Research Kitchen, NYU Abu Dhabi Division of Arts and Humanities. She will introduce this afternoon's program.
So, thank you so much, Michael, for this generous introduction. And I would like to thank one more time the 19 Washington Square staff, especially Sharon Beckman, the director, and Ralph Raymond for all your precious help. I would like to welcome you to this. It's actually the last panel of a long day of discussions, but it's our moment, our public event, and the moment that we will have two artist talks. So the theme, as you see from the title, is Decolonial Botany. So we're discussing practices of decolonization within and outside the academia, within and outside the institutions. Discussions about multi-species storytelling, but also invasive ecology and migration. And this will be also the subject, let's say, of this panel with the two artists, Tuấn Mami, who join us from Los Angeles, and Robert Zhao, who join us from Singapore. So I would like to introduce them first, and then I will have the discussion at the end, more or less 30 minutes discussion, Q&A, where you can exchange with the artists and ask perhaps more about their work. So Tuấn Mami is a Hanoi-based interdisciplinary experimental artist working with site-specific installation, video, performance, and conceptual art. Mami constantly explores new mediums, means, and methods of expression and research, focusing on social interactions between people and people with their environment. So Mami co-founded Na-San Collective in 2013, an experimental art platform which produces a series of mobile and guerrilla projects in public spaces, as well as large-scale projects with international institutions in Vietnam and abroad, pushing, I could say, the boundaries of artistic creativity and expression. So today, Tuấn Mami will discuss the Vietnamese Immigrating Garden Project, which continues his research on Vietnamese immigration communities that consist of political refugees, imported laborers, students, and others in the West. I first encountered this ongoing transnational, transgeographical project in Documenta 15 in Kassel 2 years ago. And Tuấn Mami also presented a Vietnamese immigrating garden in New Orleans. Actually, you can see this garden project till February 2nd. This is in the frame of Prospect 6 exhibition. And where he invited elders from New Orleans Vietnamese community to share personal stories and craft seed pod. Before I invite him to the floor, I would like to introduce also Robert Zhao Renhui, who is a Singapore-based interdisciplinary artist. Robert Zhao works in installation, photography, video, sculpture, and performance, and I had the chance to commission and curate his nature museum in 2018 in Athens within the frame of the Onassis Fast Forward Festival that Michael mentioned earlier. So Zhao's performative, I could say, museums lie at the heart of my forthcoming book with the University of Michigan Press on socially engaged public art and the more than human commons. So in his work, Zhao explores the complex relationships between nature and culture and challenges the dualistic separation between the human and the non-human world. Under the name of a fictional institution, the Institute of Critical Zoologists, Zhao's work creates visual ambiguities that destabilize assumptions about the ways in which images present facts, represent reality, and disseminate truths. Over the last years, he has been focusing on secondary forest in Singapore. That means forest regrown for deforested land due to human intervention, such as development and plantation, and the new ecosystems that have developed within it. And I had a chance to explore one of the secondary forests around the Gilman Barracks in Singapore in 2019 during the Singapore Biennial. So for the Singapore Pavilion at the Venice Visual Arts Biennial, which is on view in Venice till November 24, Robert Zhao presents an intensive installation on the ways in which human urban design in the island of Singapore shaped the natural world itself. So this work is actually, Robert is actually currently represents Singapore in the Venice Biennial. So, and today he will share with us his most recent research on the albizia tree as a contemporary symbol of resilience and adaptation. So thank you so much for being here with us today, and I would like to invite Tuấn Mami to share the floor. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Maybe good afternoon. We're too dark here. So thank you very much, Katia, for inviting me to being here. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us. And I felt very happy and lucky to listen all the really meaningful talk about plants and eco cultures early today's. And I was quite nervous to join this discussion because with all of the very serious and professional researchers, and then I put my title as the research-based art practice. So I think I should change it to be a wanderer researcher. So today I want to present my recently project, which I started 4 years ago during the pandemic time. So actually it came to me very randomly. I was stuck in Taiwan because of COVID-19 for about 10 months. So I couldn't go back home. But during that time, Taiwan is very lucky because it's control COVID very well. So I can be very free to travel within the country. So I have so many time to visit people. And at that time, I recognized that Vietnamese people, even though they have living in Taiwan with a very similar weather, culture, and also the plant resource and vegetable. But then for them, they still really want to collect Vietnamese plant for themselves, like from student, from worker, or new immigrants. So for them, like they at that time they also really miss home. They want to visit home, but they cannot. So they, instead of sitting and waiting, they travel around the country to collect the plant and exchange Vietnamese plant. So I found it really interesting. So I keep follow them to collect a Vietnamese plant and try to figure it out. At that time, I didn't know really much about like what difference between Vietnamese plant and Taiwanese plant. So it's quite interesting for me. So I met so many people and stories that inspire my project. Which, for example, like this garden. You know, like my work often observe Vietnamese community based on their sort of new immigrants and also their life social structures. So Vietnamese people in last 2 decades, they travel a lot to Taiwan or to Korea or to Japan as like, you know, like many young women go there to get married with the men in that countries, and also new immigrant worker. So, but then for the policy towards the new immigrants, very strict now, because the government want to control their safety, so they don't allow new immigrants to bring their seed or plant or even fruit to their country. So, so for Vietnamese people who really live closely to the nature and with their sort of garden, so they keep smuggling with them like seed or plant to have some sort of like home garden. So this image that about one of the ladies, she also went to Taiwan 20 years ago, and then she, as a young girl, but then the parents keep going to visit them. And the father have idea to build a garden like home. So he have a different idea, like bring different plant to create sort of a garden like. And the mother coming to visit her have another idea, that to bring like more like medicinal plants or vegetable plants, that to help the daughter to have a meal, or sometimes she got sickness or motherhood time, that she can went to the garden and then pick up something and then feeling like feeling home, feeling being cared. So I found, but then after like almost 20 years, they have a really big garden of so many Vietnamese plants. But then in order to keep the garden, it's so difficult for new immigrants. So they have to travel, they work so hard from like day to night. And then the parent, unfortunately, a few years ago, they passed away. So the garden cannot be taken care of. So it's been abandoned. So I known about the garden, and I went there, and my first research is about this abandoned garden. So in the very wide garden, you still find so many Vietnamese plants living and survive through the years. Also, there are many imported laborers. For their lives, they don't really have much time to travel or go out. So they work in the factory, and also they stay there. Very few, they are not allowed to go out much. So they build also their whole like life structure inside the factory. So on the back side of the factory, they will build like a garden at any place that they can have some soil. And then sometimes, like when I travel around Taiwan, I randomly see some like Vietnamese plant like grow in the public space. So when I saw them, I know that the nearby will be some Vietnamese family. So if you want to talk to them, you can just like asking who is the owner of the plant. So it's sort of a sign for me to find some sort of like my pupil. So I start to feel really interesting and thinking more about the meaning and also the what does it mean about Vietnamese plant and also why it be very controlled, very sensitive nowadays. So for example, I show this picture is a lady. She also came to Taiwan and live in mountain area. She really anti-socialite. So, but she built, like after many years, she built her mountain, like rocky mountain to be like full of Vietnamese plant. You see like all the plant. So for her, like that is her life. She can feel like really happy at home. So and then many gardens that actually like they build in the, like the Vietnamese people, they just find some empty land or abandoned land to grow something for themselves. And then slowly these community, after like 10 or 20 years, they will have a lot of plants that they start to share with people. So I found like that is interesting how they can survive and also how they develop their sort of homeland plants. And because of that, I developed my project upon that sort of observation and digging into more like the question about like why it's connected to Vietnamese plant too much. And then I found out that even in 1,000 years ago, Vietnamese people, we have like a lot of belief and different like sort of God that relate or present for the nature. So this is one of our oldest mother, Holy Mother, which present for the God of mountain. So until now, Vietnamese, the people, we still practice that religions and we still give a lot of respect to the nature. And then I also research about a different aspect like the, so one of the most important tree until now is a bohi tree in Sri Lanka, actually 247 years BC, the king of Indian sent a brand to Sri Lanka and then as a gift for the islands. So the tree still survive, make a baby and then have still present as the most important sort of spiritual tree at the moment. And then, yeah, I also searching for more information about different religions, how we believe in the tree, and then, you know, from the Bible. So they say that all the trees on the earth that give to us as a like friend and have as a food for people. But then look back to that sort of lie that I found out that we have been really live closely to the nature and the plant. And in the old days, when we travel, we need the seed of plant to survive. But then in the up to the colonial period, actually that period is the biggest era to spread the plant all around the world. The colonizer want to exploit the land, exploit the worker in different sort of continents. So you know, like they would come to like like everywhere, and then they just cut out the local like plant, and then they develop their plantation for their benefit. So, but not only that, the question about like the local and also the invader, but also they change a lot of political landscape. For example, like one of the cases I studied in Vietnam during the World War II, that French and Japanese invader, they cut off the rice, and then they grow a lot of food trees to provide for the war. But that action, in a very short time, they brought the Great Famine and killed like about 2 million Vietnamese people in a very short period. And then that period actually create the new sort of government, like the Vietnamese communist rise up, and then it also create a different era, and then make a lot of people flee away. So I think the movement of plant actually that also impact to our life, our social landscape very deeply. And then I try to see like how this topic can give me the way that to discuss about and within the art discourse. So I think that with the garden and the like sort of public garden, that we can share a lot of story about the daily life. Also, we can talk about the different sort of survival platform for people who go with the immigrating plan. So I decided to go further with several like practice. So one of my first work that I collaborate with I borrow the story of the first Vietnamese book that wrote about the Vietnamese plant in the early 1990s, and then I collaborate that story with my journey of searching for Vietnamese plant in Taiwan and make a fictional film. So the film, the way that I made it is always follow Vietnamese people, and then wherever they go, I will find some plants. That is my strategy to it. And then, and then I found out that there is a staircase in between the Vietnamese restaurant and under subway station. So I collaborate with the owner to develop, borrow all the Vietnamese plant from at that time during the pandemic time. So people also sending their plant. So I try to create the sort of social garden that people can bring to contribute to that staircase, but also people can come to pick them up to bring home. That garden continue to be a theater platform. So I made the performance, which we recreate the Holy Mother performance. So we try to make recreate the story of the different meaning of the plants, and the audience can taste and smell the plant with our like knowledge about each plant. And then that garden continue to travel to a museum, to Quan Du Fine Art Museum. So the museum invite my project into the museums, but I want them to be inside the museum for about 10 years. So I made a 10-year project inside of the museum, which the museum have in between the museum have a bit a garden inside. So I convinced them to let my garden locate there for 10 years because the reason that I want to see how that the plant can develop by themselves, also how Vietnamese community can develop along the plants. So we often throw different party with like food and with the herbal, and also we made different herbal drink out of the garden. And also, like, I invite the people who build up the garden, like they are worker, they are Vietnamese pride, but who brought and contribute their plant to the garden, come and we do like performance, we do like hang out, we do different activity inside the garden, inside the museum. And then also there is the installation, which I collect the dry Vietnamese plant herbals that normally for Vietnamese people, nowadays they're very difficult to have the new plant and seeds. So they have to keep their plant to be dry and old enough to get to make a seed. So I borrow the dry, like sort of saving plants, and then create a hut. So people can smell different smell inside of the hut. And also they can collect the seed which falling down on the floor, so bring home. It's sort of like a tricky invitation, because it's very sensitive to let people taking the seed home. So that garden like attract more and more people, and Vietnamese people start to coming and then making party by themselves. So I also create sort of community which running the garden by themselves with the museum. So I'm one of them, not like I'm the owner of the garden. And then then I researched about the like in European other countries that impact to that made that sort of colonial movement. So I also work with one library in Leipzig in Germany, and then I collect a lot of photography from that library, and which talk about the custom plantation in the east of Africa, which I was quite shocked when I see their collection, because they sort of, the way they present it, very proud of their history, that how they can make their biggest sort of cotton factory. But then that all showing how they robbed the local land and turn the local people to be a slave. So I decided to make a collage moving image that question about if the custom plan can invade the land, or we are like the mentality of colonization is the reason to create that sort of idea of investing spaces. And then during that time, I also developed another project in Kassel, which I got like quite a rocky and empty land, which I want to collaborate with Vietnamese community in Germany. So I calling the Vietnamese people around Germany to send their seed or plant to the garden. And then because to grow the Vietnamese plant in Germany is quite difficult, because the weather different and the soil different. So also I don't have any resource, because for me is I don't want to bring my stuff to there, because it's not my not the real how to say not the it's not my life. I want to see how which plant Vietnamese people need to survive in the new environment, which plant they bring to the new home to recreate their memory. So that's why I calling them to donate or to share their plant. And then with the garden, other people can also come to collect the seed of plants. So it's sort of like a hub that people contribute, also people will take when they need. But that only limited for Vietnamese people because the resource very limited. But also I want to make the question why we have to limit it for Vietnamese people. Also the question of why it turned to be called as a illegal plant or like semi-illegal, I would say. And that also they also send a lot of seeds, and then we also from that garden we also collect dry seeds. So we try to maintain that garden and then to transfer it to be for the community to continue that project. So again, this project turned to be like very public space that Vietnamese people start to join and make it as their home. So actually the show supposed to end in 3 months, which is perfectly for the season before the winter. So all the plants would die. But luckily the city required to maintain for the community. So Vietnamese people continue to grow them and also using them as their public space. I developed another version in Berlin, which like very difficult in Berlin to have a garden. Also, it's very not easy to maintain the garden in the big city because it requires people to take care. So in Berlin, then it's very difficult to find people who have time to take care of the public space or like public garden. So instead of making the garden, I borrow their baby, or say their pet. All the plants they really sort of their loved ones. So I exhibit them as their like sort of a spiritual connection. So you can hear a lot of story with the sound speaker installation about their memory or emotion involved with their own plants. And then recently I made a couple of work that I work with the Vietnamese community in Korea, which with that city have so many young bride. I collaborate with them to create about 40,000 seed balls, which I collect the seed from their gardens and then working together to make a clay ball. So we install them to be like a tree shape, and the audience. It's like a performative installation. Other audience can pick up one ball home. So the work slowly disappear. But then for me, the performative part continue to grow in each audience house. So hopefully one day that the work can grow in many other different locations. I think I have maybe 4 minutes. So quickly, I introduce about 2 last projects. This one I found a plant, water drop plant, which also very interesting story. The man, and you see the old man there, he's the only man who still living in small village in the west of Germany. So he came to Germany as a boatman, fled away in the 1975. And then, so he came a bit later. He came around early 1980s. So when he arrived at the camp, is no food, of course, for Vietnamese people, eating bread is so difficult. So he also feel very depressed. So one day he walked around the village. So he found that in the canal, that canal run around the village, there is one water plant that is a vegetable. So he harvested it and bring home. So, and then he continued to go back to find it, and he figured out that this plant is only plant that can survive through the winter. So when the water, during winter, the water turned to be ice, the plant still survive. But it stays still, and then until when the spring coming or summer coming, it's grow again. So he found that it's sort of like really strong survival. So he kept staying in this little village because he want to stay next to that plant. So he took me to to find this plant during the summer 2 years ago, and he said, every year we have to go to find because the government tried to clean up them because they be considered as an invader or some sort of, they need to clean up the canal. So the government will clean up all the canals, but the root of the plant will float because the canal is floating water. So the root will fly somewhere, flow somewhere, and then it will find a new home around that village, and then it will grow back during the summer. So every summer he keeps that sort of ritual to go to find this plant. So I found it's a really powerful survival mode. So I collaborate with him to bring that plant to the museum and try to install that plant into the museum, which that museum also have a very special history about the colonial period that the king built it for Asian sort of image. It's called Japanese palace. So I found like with the very brutal history of the museum, I want to put some simple work that have really meaningful for people and make a contrast with the museum. So during the summer, we continue to invite Vietnamese people come and use that plant and make the hot pot and make different salad, and we do event. So we keep that event like this until like now is the third time already. And I think the last project I want to introduce is my current work that I made in New Orleans and the opening last weekend. So in this work, I was invited to develop the Vietnamese garden project. But when I visit the New Orleans, I found that there's a really big Vietnamese community, and really interesting that because they already developed their life there for over 50 years. So because of the community, they are already long enough, and also they already be uprooted. So they're not like another community who are waiting to go home. But these people, they are both people, they don't want to go back to Vietnam. So they found their new sort of a homeland in New Orleans. So they developed so many gardens, and one of the gardens that inspired me a lot is called my father's garden, 1,000 Miles. Because his father, he came to New Orleans when he was small, and his father built a big garden with all the Vietnamese plants. And he wanted to keep that spirit and make it like a home in the new lands. So when the father passed away, he built the the gate, and then he want to pass that story to his children and to other people. So I made a like fictional documentary film, which inside of that village, and then you can see like on the road so many like sort of herbal plants are growing because the seed traveling by the wind or by the animal. But I feel like it's sort of powerful because the plant is really, for Vietnamese people, it reminds us a lot about our memory, our cultures. So when we see them even on the street, we feel really much connected to our motherland. So, and then during the opening, I have a long table that I invite the other people come, and then they make a seed bowl. The seed come from their garden, and they will put the seed in the clay, and then teaching people how to make it, and sharing during that working together. They will tell people about their life, and then they want to share actually. And then also they will perform different songs that they often sing together. So that's somehow I want to bring their life together and then try to share the story that they, for many years, they kept very secretly, or they live very lonely. So this is a time that they are old enough, they want to share with people. So I think it's a good time a good chance for me to collaborate with them to talk about history, but also to bring it to future that we have to remember and we have to carry on. So people can, audience can pick up the seed bowl and bring home. And hopefully that's, my work is called like seeding the future. Hopefully in the future we feel home everywhere. And I think the plant is question mark about why it turned to be the illegal sort of dangerous invasive plants. So hopefully we don't have to have a fear for it. And thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Katia, for inviting me to this panel. That's Katia, you here. In Singapore in 2019.
April this year.
So I started with this video because we were talking, so we were all thanking Katia for being here. And I remember in 2019, she came to Singapore with, that's the Hikaru, another Japanese artist, and we met in Flash Forward Festival earlier on. And it just so happened that both of them were in Singapore in 2019, and we are in a secondary forest here. A secondary forest meaning that this was previously a British military barrack up till the 90s. The land and all the buildings were cleared, and actually the land was laid to waste. And the forest we see here is actually a very young forest, but it looks quite lush, and it's all mainly dominated by albizia trees, which are trees which I'm going to talk about today, and also African oil palm, rubber trees. So all the plantation trees are living wildly and in a kind of a strange chaos and harmony, and also supporting a lot of alien and invasive species of plants and insects, along with native species. So this is an area that I've been looking at in my work, and I'm going to share a bit about today. And the reason why Katia was there in the forest is because as part of the work, I also conduct tours in these secondary forests in Singapore. And these secondary forests are, they contribute about 25% of the island. These are forests that kind of sprung up kind of spontaneously after a land is cleared and laid to waste. They kind of just spring up, and this one is about 30 years old. Okay, we can start the PowerPoint. This one. Yeah. So the camera, which captured the footage of us walking, was a camera on a dead tree, Albizia 4. So the reason why the Albizia tree is kind of is introduced from the Solomon Islands and the Maluku Islands by the British. Not sure when, but today it's one of the most common trees in Singapore. And the camera was on a tree that has kind of fallen over, and we were kind of climbing up. And the camera was there to monitor how the tree would kind of eventually decompose into the ground. So I was trying to capture how long it took the tree to kind of disappear into the forest. So that was that's why the camera was there, and that was the route that I usually bring my guests through the forest. And you can ask Katia, the secondary forest is not a friendly place. It's very demanding. It takes away everything from you. It's very different from a garden. So this is Singapore. You can see the map on the left, mainly before 1819, which is when the British found Singapore, modern Singapore. We were actually quite green naturally, like there was a lot of kind of primeval vegetation. And fast forward to 2011, you can see much of that greenness has disappeared and it's been replaced by another kind of green. The Singapore that we know or kind of is marketed to the public is we were for the longest time the garden city. It changed to become a city in a garden, and the latest kind of marketing phrase was a city in nature, right? So, but in terms of garden, I think we are kind of a island country garden, full-fledged. Everything about the nature on the island is in full control, right? And you can take a look at the percentage here. So most of the urban areas are 38%, and the managed vegetation, which is at 27%, these are all the trees that are planted by the government. And interestingly, the scrubland, the young secondary forest and the old secondary forest, they actually take up about 25% of the island, and these are all in different small packets of the island. And of course, we have less than 1.5% of what was there before 1819. And a thing to remember here is that the primary forests are priced more valuable than the secondary forests that occur naturally. So efforts to preserve natural old forests are more than these naturally occurring forests that are young and old secondary forests. So our national park spot actually have a very comprehensive database of all the trees that they plant, and it's released on their website. And someone, not the government agency, actually went to visualize this data, and it's on the website exploretrees.sg. So all the little tiny green dots that you see is actually all the trees that are planted by NParks. This is one of the most extensive tree map in Asia. So you can click on every tree and you can find the height, you can find the species, when it was planted, how old it is. And if you quickly look at this map, you would think that this is all the trees that exist, but no. This only contributes to the trees that are planted. But of course, there are trees that are not planted that occur naturally on the island as well. But this tree, you'll never find information about them because they are seen as a kind of anomaly in this system. Okay. Hello? Okay, I'm open. Okay, so these are trees that are kind of worthy to be cataloged and given a kind of a database inside this. But my obsession with trees that are not in this catalog system or kind of not recognized in this very managed nature. This is a view of my window in Singapore. It's kind of in the southwest area. And for me, when I realized that there was a fundamental difference between secondary forests and primary forests, secondary being lousy and primary being superior, I was kind of very interested in why a secondary forest, visually, I can't really tell the difference between a primary and a secondary, was given such low status when it actually has a kind of a beauty, a chaos and unpredictability in it, which I like, which was charming. And of course, what you see here, actually in the horizon on the left, almost all the trees are albizia trees. They are easily the tallest tree in the nation, and it's also the most common tree in the nation. but they are seen as enemies, and because they are labeled as introduced and kind of invasive, they fall easily in a storm. So this is a theater production that I did, looking at a non-human life that thrive in this secondary forest outside my window. So I kind of bring in a lot of fake plants. No, these are real plants into the theater. And inside the theater, there was about 13 videos. And these are videos from that were kind of monitoring the non-human life that were occurring inside the secondary forest for about 4 years. So I kind of edited and cut the videos in, and members of the public could go into the theater for 50 minutes. There was no actors, just the video screens turning on and off, and you have to kind of follow the very open narrative in this space. This is actually a 8-minute clip, but we don't have time for that. So I'm just going to show you the first 4 minutes of it. This is actually a cut of the video that was kind of inside the theater production. This is also just around my house from the same view. And this is not an albizia tree. This is an African mahogany. And this is the space you're looking at now is kind of considered a wasteland, a scrubland. And all of these trees are African mahoganies. Nobody really knows why there are so many African mahoganies there, but they are tall and they're strong. And this is just a kind of a routine management because this tree was sick and it has to go. And usually they don't do this because this is really illegal. They usually cut the tree down section by section. So when I was there that day, I didn't know why they kind of do a Wild West timber style in the middle of the city. So this is actually quite, as you can see, they realized it was quite dangerous towards the end. So this is taken from my window. And if you see the background, all those trees are albizia trees, the one with the kind of striking white branches. And this section of the video actually documents a really large mammal, which is a native mammal. You can see the stand, open space, there are sambar deers there. And these sambar deers were extinct locally in the 70s. But in the last 10 years, a lot have came out in the secondary forest. Nobody really knows why. They are kind of suddenly appearing because everyone thought they disappeared. Some believe that actually they managed to avoid detection in the kind of a central catchment for 50 years, and it was just recently their population exploded. So they thrive really in this secondary forest, which are kind of around the edge of the city. They're really smart. They come out at night, and once the sun kind of rises, they will escape back into the secondary forest to hide. So most people don't get to we know they exist, but it's kind of really hard to see these large mammals because they're really smart and sensitive to people and noise. So this large green space actually you're looking at used to be a quarry, and it was left abandoned actually quite recent in the early 90s, and so the kind of refill it and the grass grew back, and for the longer time it was left undeveloped, and then this is kind of rare to have large green spaces that are managed in Singapore. So I don't know how the deers found this spot. So every morning before the sun rises, they will be there, kind of attracted to the young grass shoots. And these are lalang. These are the kind of the grass that were kind of a problem since the British came to Singapore. Lalang was kind of a very, very big, huge problem because a lot of land was unmanaged. and this grass would virtually kind of always grow over it, making the land kind of useless. But in this case, today, the Sambadia kind of is attracted to all these wastelands because of the kind of fresh green grass shoots that you can feed on. So this is also taken from my window. And if you see later on, you zoom out, it's actually just right by the highway. Sorry, this was a double channel, so that was on the other channel, not on this side of the channel. But this is really just beside the road, so people going by really fast will not be seeing it. I think during the pandemic, this same forest was starting to be cleared to make way for bus transport people. So I kind of, later on in this video, will just kind of document how the whole forest of Albizias was kind of just removed for a period of 10 days. Okay. So this is a stand of Albizia trees in Singapore, the very same stand that you saw Katia kind of climbing out from. And there's actually a eagle nest, really small, somewhere in the middle. And there are many such stands in Singapore. The interesting fact about these stands is that all the trees are probably of the same age, and they're all single generation. Okay, and if you, so they were probably there when the land was cleared, and they kind of all grew up together. So you can almost date the age of the trees quite accurately to when it was cleared, almost all the time. And because they are all the same species, they are kind of, maybe some of us are familiar with this, the crown shiners. You always get a kind of a beautiful effect of this crown shiners where the canopy learns not to touch each other. And it's kind of really beautiful in Singapore. A lot of secondary forests happen to have the trees that are the same species. And this kind of will, if you venture into them, you kind of be rewarded with this site. So I've spent quite a number of years looking at all these secondary forests in Singapore, seeing them come and go, but mainly they are going now in Singapore. And the albizia is probably the most common tree in Singapore. It's also easily the tallest. It's a contender for the fastest growing tree in the world and can reach a height of 7 meters in a year if the conditions are right, 15 in 3 years, and 30 meters in 10 years. So it's originally from the Solomon Islands and the Maluku Islands in Indonesia and is known as a pioneering species. So usually it's the first to come on the disturbed land because native trees and species are not that adaptable to a land that is so disturbed by human activity. So the albizia is usually the first one to come and try to make it habitable for animals in the future. But the problem with albizia is that the branches are really brittle and the roots go wide rather than deep. So in monsoon Singapore, they often topple over. But I realized the toppling over has its benefits as well because the dead tree in the forest actually may be more beneficial to the surrounding organisms than the live one. And you can, with my camera on the dead tree, I have observed that actually there's another kind of life that goes on celebrating the life of the dead tree. But this takes a long time to observe. Here you can roughly see the fence by the drain. and that was caused by a fallen albizia. So this tree is considered really dangerous because they may fall and damage property or cars and people. So there was a period in the 90s where all albizias on the roadside were kind of removed for safety. And so now they're all confined to the secondary forest. But yeah, even when we were in the secondary forest, Katia would have known that the trees are all kind of fallen over. It's really very hard to navigate the forest. So between 1965, Singapore independence from the British, to the early 1990s, many old plantations and British military camps and kind of areas were kind of left vacant and undeveloped, and large amount of secondary forests are formed in Singapore. Now, in the recent decade, these secondary forests actually are being cleared for various reasons, housing and manufacturing, etc. And in the early 2000s, there were some reactions from the nature-loving public. So whenever one of these small stands of secondary forests go, there will be a debate on social media, and it becomes harder and harder for this forest to be kind of removed. So there need to be kind of environmental impact assessment to be done, whether this forest can be removed. But precisely because the albizia are the main trees in this forest, they are the reason to go. So during the pandemic, there was a forest. Actually, if you look at on the picture on the left, actually that's one of the white blocks in my apartment. So I could see this forest in the horizon. This forest was accidentally cleared, and the reason that was and it was like, how could this happen? How could the forest be accidentally cleared? And blah blah blah. And what kind of captured my attention was that there is no environmental impact assessment needed, because the sites were dominated by non-native albizia trees. And you can see in the picture all the white trees, all the white trunks, those are all albizia trees, kind of and it really looks like a kind of a really lush forest. Actually, for the untrained eye, it looks no different from a primary forest. So now let's talk about how the albizia tree came to Singapore. The first albizia came to Singapore. Nobody really knows why, because this was not a very important tree. It was a tree that was carried along with rubber and coffee and oil palm. So this is the earliest photograph I can find from 1890, and it was and that tree is an albizia tree in front of a kind of military barrack in Tanglin in the center of town. And I collect kind of old pictures of Singapore as well. So when I was doing this project, I kind of just looked through all the pictures I have. And actually, if you look through from 1890s onwards to the 1900s, albizias were kind of everywhere. They were already well established in our landscape. You kind of, if you're looking for them, you kind of will see them kind of witnessing the mass destruction that was happening. So I found this in I think it was 1866 agricultural news from the Gardens Bulletin. And it says Albizia malucana, that's the species that we're looking at, is a very well-known shade tree, growing very rapidly and attaining a great height. And let us just go to the last part. It has long been used as a shade tree for coffee. So actually, it came to Singapore, not known when, but it was a kind of a plant that we used to grow alongside coffee plant. So coffee plantation, and this is kind of before rubber. So it's really old. So I don't really have the year that it came, but we know that because in Java, when they grew coffee, there were stands of albizia used as shade trees as well. So this was probably something that they kind of brought along. So the reason why the albizia came to Singapore was kind of used as a shade tree for coffee plantation. And then of course, like the rubber tree and the oil palm and all the other South American trees, they escape and they kind of form a kind of a forest today in Singapore. I have to make a point that not everyone demonizes this tree in Singapore. I have a good friend, ecologist, Dr. Yong Dingley, and he's the main reason why I kind of try to look at this tree from a different viewpoint. He has tried in all his ways to kind of promote positive thinking about this tree, and he had some interesting results where there was a particular kind of a really short paper that discusses that because the albizia trees are so tall, they grow faster than native trees. Native trees cannot compete to grow so fast. What actually happened was that a changeable hawk eagle, a kind of a native land eagle, one that has not been observed breeding since 1927, started to breed in the last kind of 20 years. And they almost always, the nest was on an albizia tree. And this they have kind of good numbers that says that actually the successful kind of breeding of this changeable hawk eagle is due to all these albizia tree stands that you can find in Singapore. So something good out of something bad. But still, they are seen as alien and useless, and I begin to wonder why this tree that is in all my videos and in all my landscape can thrive so well here. What is its behavior from where it originally comes from? So doing a reverse journey, I wanted to find out how the albizas live in the Maluku Island. So this is very recent. It was just 3 weeks ago. This is the albizia stand in Singapore. So 3 weeks ago, I went to the Maluku Islands, and you can see it's almost on the same. Singapore is on the right, and Maluku is on the left, and you can see it's almost on the same latitude line, but a very, very difficult place to go to. So there isn't a lot of literature describing how this tree is in the Malukus, because once again, it's not a very important tree. It is used as a kind of timber tree, but the literature that exists is only about it as a timber, but not about its natural behavior. So it is mostly known as a soft tree that grows fast. And so going around with my guide, I sent him pictures of this tree. And then he says that he sees the albizia tree in the Maluku Islands, but never in the forest. It's always on the side of the roads, just like we see in Singapore. So I was really confused, like why is it behaving in a way in its native homeland where it's also growing on disturbed land? So so we went there, and then it was always besides the road. And so if it was an old road, the albizia tree would be really old. So it was a newly built road. It was kind of young trees. So I verified with the village nearby and asked how long the road was, how old was it, and it matches the age of the trees. And also in newly cleared areas, you will have large stands of albizia around it. So this was actually my driver, and he had an albizia tree in his land, and the albizia kind of naturally grew there. So there was two, which was of the same size, and he was keeping it for it to become bigger, because there's a village in the Maluku Islands that wants the albizia tree to build boats. So he would kind of sell it to this village later on when the albizia tree becomes bigger. But on the last day, just before I left for Singapore, I had a chance to go to a volcanic lake, and all around the lake, there was hundreds of albizia trees just kind of lining this huge lake, and it was a volcanic lake. And then I went to several more volcanic kind of places that were kind of had volcanic activity in the past, and true enough, there was always albizia stands or huge albizia stands growing all around it, all of the same size. So what I realized, I think, was that the albizia had a very specific purpose of pioneering spaces where there were huge major landscape changes, and in this case, volcanic activity. So they will be the first to go in to kind of rewild or regreen the land again. So in Singapore, of course, the equivalent of a volcanic force would be our excavators. We tear and build and tear the land. And often when we lay it to waste, the albizia will be the first to come into the ground and do what it always does back in the Maluku Islands. So this images and this work that I'm doing where I visit the Maluku Islands is actually for a project that is really new. It's a work in progress. I have a show coming up in Singapore, and it will be going to 4 places, different locations in Singapore, talking about the albizia tree. And I chose, and because every location has its own secondary forest nearby, sometimes it's just outside the space, I kind of document 4 albizia trees in Singapore and kind of show it together with how the Maluku tree, the albizia tree looks like in Maluku. So I'm going to end the talk with the pictures of these 5 trees. Thank you.